teach the science and art of ecstasy. We teach people how to turn on or how to go out of their minds. The point is that in order to use your head, you have to go out of your mind. You have to go out of all of the static, symbolic ways in which you think and experience.
In the middle of August 1969, an old dairy farm in the Catskill Mountains of New York became a theater for the entire effort of some 100 years of Marxist, deconstructive social engineering within the West. The play that it presented was one of cultural effigy and sacrifice. Many of its supplicants were either stoned or crucified by the new order of chemical revelations and countercultural diktats of the postmodern philosophers. And from Frankfurt to rural New York, and then back on to Davos they went. Many of them groupies who would eventually trade in their sandals for Pierre Cardin suits, running the great financial houses of the international elite, while influencing a radically liberal new political cast towards a corporate Marxism that only industrialists or hippies could understand. When a man or society decides to take the dangerous path, the one less traveled, they embark knowing that some risks will be assumed against whatever benefits they could hope to achieve, but that they cannot ever know of all of these. However, when the choice has been made against a society's will, or through coercion, nothing can be gained by it, for a good derived must be one that favors growth or fundamental development, while all others seeming to be good are simply new roads that tend away from the will of nature. This was the case when Western civilization stepped into the 1960s, and, under a misplaced reverence for false social paradigms and a newly acquired apprehension of novel cultural values, chose a course towards ruin with a callous unconcern for the past, present, or future, in what can be regarded as the greatest generational shift towards existential nihilism that has occurred at any point in human history. And it did so, wearing a hiked-up miniskirt and a loose, sordid smile. After the 1950s, several victories had been scored by the technical elite in the Western Hemisphere, namely that the cultural Marxist intelligentsia was given full academic control at the collegiate and scholastic levels of society, particularly in the fields of psychology, philosophy, sociology, and political science. The progressive liberal arm of this elite, after it had defeated Senator Joseph McCarthy, who had represented the last desperate push by the European cultural lobby to regain social authority in America, now had complete dominance over the cultural communication complex, including film, television, news media, publishing, advertising, and art. The governments in all Western nations greatly expanded their political functions to include those which operated outside of the public purview, while drawing in antithetical corporate factions and globalist agenteurs with advisory capacities to help steer these countries down the road of no return. After 1965, immigration acts in all Western nations were created within 2 years, without public input, and the flooding of the West by non-European peoples thus began. Abortion was legalized soon thereafter, and some 100 million pregnancies were terminated by ethnic European mothers between 1970 and 2010 in North America, Europe, and Australia. But it was the baby boomers and the subsequent hippie generation who became the foot soldiers for this technocracy shaping the West, their social activism and voting patterns throwing the entire history of Western civilization under the bus, along with anything that considered itself higher, nobler, or beautiful, swapped out for assembly line liberal beliefs and aesthetics, unprincipled lifestyles, and a burning narcissism that kept our entire civilization in a perpetual state of self-centered infancy. Synthetic mantras and psychotropic drugs filled the spiritual void left by the deliberate, socio-cultural excision of Christianity, which had been the patriarchal bedrock for the notion of family, community, and ethnic identity between Europeans for centuries, its authority and sovereignty being mocked, then stripped out by the new political class and its propagandist elements. The home where the European spirit dwelt was replaced by an illusory matrix of systems and inventions based on the cult of celebrity, guilt-based allegory, and the fetishism of social justice. Moving ever more quickly into the void, this technical elite, the political and managerial class, and the international financial establishment, all purveyors of the globalist Marxist worldview, decided that foisting neoliberalism and progressive democratic socialism upon the West would be the safest and quickest path to 1. The elimination of European ethnic group cohesion, while subjecting them to social policies designed to cause infighting and a desire towards deracination, thus leading to the eventual eradication of all European nation-states. 2. The centralization of political power, furthering the protection of the political and managerial classes, while devising foreign policies to coincide with the principles of global markets and multilateral rule, to advance integration worldwide while consolidating wealth into the hands of this technical class. 3. Begin using these policies to empty the Third World into the West, to stagnate the economic power of native European working classes, while simultaneously creating an antagonistic voting bloc and standing army, owning different cultures and gods, that could then be used at a moment's notice if the European populations were ever to fight back against these hostile pressures for their own self-realization. And 4. The erosion of all borders within and without Western civilization, while forcing other nation-states around the globe to do likewise through economic sabotage, trade warfare, cultural demoralization, and propaganda. The embedded liberal political class, owning all the state power in Western nations, now take direction from these corporate Marxists, Bilderbergers, and high financiers whose greed for utter domination and money were insidiously merged with the false idols of free love and open borders. This perverse, nihilistic cult, perched atop of Western civilization, holding the levers of power, controlling all narratives, with a single burning desire to exterminate European culture, has seemingly no other goal in mind other than our total ruin. There is no preparation for something greater, lasting, or spiritually higher. They simply want complete, totalitarian control of each individual soul, and to harness these into a collectivist God-killing machine, fabricating a dark, sinister world from its tortured parts. How this quotidian realm of the unreal shall appear to the eye is anyone's guess, but it will be hell incarnate, a cauldron for every evil that man has ever known, and all nations on earth shall tremble in its bloody wake.